In today's episode of Unsolved Canadian Mysteries, we're talking about the Partridge Creek Monster. Was it a ancient prehistoric mammal? Was it a dinosaur?
Or maybe it was just a bear. Actually, this one could probably be a bear.
Come check it out. Hello, everybody. My name is Kenton DeYoung, and I'm sitting here with my co-host, Dylan Fairman.
Yeah.
And this is Unsolved Canadian Mysteries.
Oh, I tried to do it at the same time.
We can do it.
No.
But Dylan, how you been?
And that's how you make a moment awkward. It's been great, Kenton. How have you been?
It's good, man. The weather's starting to change. We're getting into Halloween soon.
Yeah, that's like prime time in your house.
Oh, it's already decorated.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we took all the pumpkins out of the pumpkin patch last night. We got...
Oh, yeah, you grew pumpkins.
We have them on the front step now. You know, and inside the house is decorated with lights and ghosts and everything already. Are you ready for tonight's episode?
What do you got, dude?
I think you'll like this one.
You think I like it?
I think you will. Maybe more than the Patreon one we just did.
That's unlikely since it involved a bear with human arms.
Yeah, the fishing
but
rod.
Sure.
And so I think I started off the Patreon one saying how I found a really good story, but I wasn't sure about it, and then I found the one we did on Patreon.
Right.
And the same thing here. I was going to do that story on this time, but again, I found an even better one.
Wow.
So this poor story keeps getting pushed back and back and back.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it because the story is just great.
Cool.
Right. So I was trying to figure out the date when this exactly occurred, but I had a lot of trouble with it because it's like a reencountment of a story and they don't have the exact date down. But because, well, it takes place in the Yukon. It takes place kind of near Partridge Creek, which is just south of Dawson City, kind of down the river a bit. So very far up north, and because I've been up there, I know seasons kind of. And in the story, they're walking through a marsh. So this means it has to be before September because it's freezing.
Yeah, it's like freezes. Summer then.
Yeah, and it has to be probably after April, May.
Yeah.
So you got like a 3-month time period there, right?
3 months of summer.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So like they say in the story that there was like some sulfur lakes or whatever that was heating up the water, but I can't see a whole marsh being heated up by this. So I'm putting it in the summer of 1903. So Georges M. Dupuy is this French writer and traveler. I think he was like a doctor, a physician.
Sorry, what was that?
Georges M. Dupuy.
Dupuy.
Well, it's a French name, so it's probably like Dufay.
Yeah, okay.
But it's Dupuy.
Because if you say Doofy, I think of Scary Movie. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those, like Officer Doofy. But anyway, let's go Dufay.
Dufay. Georges M. Dufay.
Yeah.
He was a French writer and traveler. I think he was a doctor or something of that sort as well. But he traveled the north a lot. Alaska, Yukon, Northwest Territories. He was up there a lot. And this day, in the summer of 1903, he was with a couple other guys. There was Mr. James Lewis Buttler, a banker from San Francisco. He was there because of the recently concluded Klondike Gold Rush. He wanted to get in on some of the gold going around. There was Mr. Tom Leemore from McQuestion River. He was a miner. Yeah. Occupation miner. Not an age. Yeah. And a missionary from Armstrong Creek, Reverend Lavagneux. The four of them were traveling together, and they had 5 indigenous people with them as well from the Clay-a-Cuck tribe.
Clay-a-Cuck tribe.
Yeah. All right. I don't have to say those names ever again.
Hey, you got it all out of the way.
Yep. They were witnesses to what happened, okay? So they're important to mention who they were and that he wasn't alone when this happened.
Who were they again?
No.
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
In the summer of 1903, these men are traveling through the Yukon, and they're going over a hill, they're coming down the other side, and they see Grant's cabin. I don't know who Grant is, but they are happy to see it because it's a friend of theirs, and they're tired, and it's getting late. It's a place for them to rest for the night.
Good old Grant.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
So they show up at Grant's cabin. Grant lets them in, makes them some food. Says, hey, you can spend the night. You can get started in the morning. Not a big deal. So the next morning, they're waking up, and Grant comes in. He was outside for a bit, and he comes in and says, there were some caribou over on Partridge Creek. There's like a plateau, and then the creek is below. The terrain in the Yukon is very hills, mountains, terrains, rivers. It gets very rugged. So it makes sense that there'd be a plateau, kind of break off, and then the plain below, and then a creek. Very common. And he says, there's 3 caribou over there. Why don't we go hunt them? And everyone says, yeah, we got to big group here. 3 of them. They can't all get away from us. Let's do it. So they head out into the Yukon towards this creek, and they get to the plateau. And yeah, they see the 3 of them there. The 3 caribou are eating the lichen off the rocks, drinking the water out of the creek.
Having a great time.
Just doing a caribou thing. And as the men quietly are discussing the best way to get down and surround and hunt these 3, the 3 caribou put their heads up and they bolt. They just run. And it's surprising because nothing's around them. Like these men, they're a ways away up on the cliff. They're not down there. So there's no way they heard them talking. I thought, oh, that's strange. Let's go down and see what that was all about. So they get their way down the plateau and they get down to the creek. And they find something imprinted in the mud. It was 2 feet deep, 30 feet long, and 12 feet wide. Pretty big impression. It had arms and legs. Each of them ended with a paw-like impression. The paw was about 5 feet long. On the edge of each paw was a 1 foot long claw mark. And behind it was about a 10 foot long, 16 inch wide at the longest tail of some kind. This is a big thing, but they didn't see it when they were up on the plateau, but apparently the caribou did, and that's why they ran. That's what they think. They think something like that is too big, right? This must be something else, right? Maybe a geological malformation or something. Right? Who knows what it could be, right?
Right.
But they measured it out. This is okay. This is what we saw. This is the impression left in the earth. And they wandered around the marsh for the rest of the day, trying to find the caribou, trying to find what maybe made this impression, maybe any other evidence of this kind of thing. And the night was, which is weird to me, because if this was summer, there's no night, right? Because the sun doesn't go down in June.
Maybe they just mean time frame.
Yeah, well, they would go into a ravine and set up a fire for the night. So I'm thinking if it was nighttime, it doesn't quite fit for me why they'd be doing this if it was a summer. So unless it was later, let's say August, September, or earlier in the year, and this sulfur in the marsh kept the marsh liquid, as opposed to frozen, I don't know. That was kind of a strange thing, but
how would they describe it if it was day all the time? Like if it was later and they're stopping to set up a fire, would they say, like, how would they say it? They might just say night.
Yeah.
Even though it is day light.
It could be twilight. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because the sun doesn't like.
Maybe they would say late.
Yeah.
Maybe it's bedtime, but like that sounds dumb. So they might have just said night just to describe that.
Okay, fair. Okay. So they set up a fire, and they have kind of given up for the day. They're going to make rest for the night or whatever, and then head back probably to Grant's cabin in the morning. I guess they still have to sleep, right, at some point. And they have a fire going, and they have some tea on the fire, and the tea is just ready to go. And they're in this ravine, and there's kind of cliffs all around them. And as they are making this tea, it's just about ready to go, they hear some rocks tumbling off the edge of the ravine.
Great.
So they go and look.
It's the monster of Cabbage Town, isn't it?
They see a monster.
Yeah.
This tall creature with something hanging out of its mouth on either side. And they hear crunching on like bones.
Like a caribou?
Yeah, like a caribou.
Whoa.
So this thing has to be huge to have a caribou in its mouth. And they see it kind of climbing over the edge of the ravine and then down into where they are.
Right.
So 3 of the men, Dupuy, the Reverend, one of the other ones, Leemore, they all huddle together. Buttler takes off running, and the indigenous men they have with them all kind of lay on the ground and hide, right? Making themselves as small as possible. And they see this thing kind of wander towards them, oblivious that they are there with their fire. And it sits down, and its big belly is on the ground. And they can see this thing because the sun is still on the horizon, and they can see it. And it has the face kind of like a dog. It's covered in like a black fur, like a blackish gray fur. And how to describe it? Like, the caribou's hanging out of the mouth. I can't think of anything else I said about it. It had made like a roaring kind of sound, like a guttural sound. I thought maybe it was hurt when it was coming down off the ravine, but it just seems to make its normal sound it was making. Did I miss anything?
Unless the caribou wasn't dead and was giving a death rattle.
The only thing I missed saying was that the belly was covered in mud, but I guess that was kind of already given because it was in the mud earlier.
Right.
So the creature sat there for a while, chewing its prey,
right,
watching the sun, and then after a few minutes, the thing gets up and goes back the way it came. So Buttler comes back, and because he was hiding, he came back, and he says it was about 30 tons. He estimates the size and the weight of it, which is about 10 elephants, and he says what he thinks it was. Do you have any idea what it is yet?
Well, The abominable snowman. I don't know. Yeti. Yetis are white though, right? All white.
Yeah, and they're more bipedal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Butler says he thinks it was a Ceratosaurus. Did I say that right?
Or Ceratosaurus?
Ceratosaurus. Right. I forgot the one thing was that it had like a half horn on its nose.
That's a Ceratosaurus, yeah.
Yeah, right. He thinks it was a Ceratosaurus.
Ceratosaurus. Yeah, probably not. That's interesting. And wait, okay, that's so funny. That would have been the late 18 the end of the last century was like the boom for the dinosaur stuff. So yeah, they would know what a Ceratosaurus is. But I don't think no. Okay, hold on. I don't think Ceratosaurus is in that area. I think Ceratosaurus is in the States.
So he thinks it's a Ceratosaurus.
Okay.
They all kind of agree it's some kind of creature, right? But then they leave the area and they go back to Grant's cabin. They say they took some photos of it too, but I'm not sure at what point. Dupuy said he wouldn't show any of those crooks in Dawson City this photo. He's going to take the photos with him back to France. He takes the photos back to France, and then a few years later, in 1907, he gets a letter from the Reverend. Mm-hmm. The Reverend said that he and 10 other Aboriginal Indigenous men were up north and saw the creature again, this time running across the lake, and the claws were ripping up the ice as it ran like a whirlwind. Mm-hmm. So they went to go follow these tracks across the ice and into the trees, and they saw again the imprint in the snow, matching the same dimensions they saw earlier in the mud. But then it started to snow, and they couldn't follow the tracks anymore. So he wrote a letter to Dupuy telling him he saw it again, and it matches the same dimensions of it. And Dupuy then prints his own testimony and that of the Reverend in the paper. This gets the attention of the Duke of Westminster, Hugh Grosvenor. The Duke Grosvenor, saying that wrong. Well, the Duke hears about this creature, this Ceratosaurus, and how big it is. And he says, I want to set up a hunting party to go.
Yeah, good old smart people. It's like, oh, there's something that there might only be one of. Let's kill it.
So the Duke sets up this huge hunting party to go to the Yukon to hunt this creature.
Yeah.
And they even have a cage built for it. And they have a whole process ready to go. It takes them a couple years to get this thing going. And as they are about to get going, World War I starts. And
priorities.
Suddenly, they can't. Darn, right?
Ugh.
So time passes, the war passes. The interest in the monster of Partridge Creek is starting to fade, right? Because that was 1903, 1907. And now it's after the First World War when the world's starting to modernize, right? They're not looking for these monsters anymore.
Right.
Well, one of the things that happened following the First World War that we don't have to talk about in the West is Soviet Union then decided that although they had expanded from Europe all the way to the Pacific Ocean, they really didn't have a detailed map of the country yet. They didn't really map it out. So they decided to send some people out to eastern Russia to map out mountain ranges, lakes, rivers, that kind of thing, to get an idea of the geography of the entire country. Because Russia's so big, and that part of Russia is so far from Moscow that it's like, why bother? But they decided, now that we are Soviet Union, now we're going to actually know what's in our country. One of the places they have recently discovered following the First World War was the Chersky Range. This mountain range kind of near the edge of Russia, kind of near the Bering Strait, probably still kind of far away, but looks close enough on the map. And what they said they saw was a pack of these dinosaur-like creatures running. And they said they found one that was dead, and that's some of the Aboriginal Indigenous men in Russia. So I'm not sure who that would be. I don't know my Russian groups, right?
Right.
They said that they cut off the foot of it and took it into town to try and sell it. So this news of this pack of dinosaurs running around in eastern Russia got over to the West. And that really sparked this idea of this monster of Partridge Creek. And the thought is, it's probably one and the same, and that they just migrate over the Bering Strait in the winter.
Right.
We have two countries that have both reported a similar creature. Yeah, the Soviet Union has no reason to lie about this.
Right.
Because they don't care about a monster in Canada, right?
Right.
And Canada's only interested because they know they're talking about a similar monster. And you have Bigfoot also is in both countries, on both sides of the Pacific Ocean.
I didn't know that.
I think they have Sasquatch here, and they have the abominable snowman on that side.
Oh,
I think it's about the same guy. We never covered that, so maybe they're different. All right, so that is kind of like, you don't hear much more about this for a while. This changes in 1999 when there's a family in Fairbanks, Alaska, and they are just pulling into like a parking lot to try and find a place to stay for the night. And they see another vehicle go to a hotel, and the guys go in and check in. They go back to their car, and they're driving back to their room. And I'm not sure why they're observing them. I think they're kind of planning out what they're going to do and just kind of watching someone as they plan it out. And they see when these two people get to their room, they stop and they look in their direction, and they scream and run to the room. They hear a sound, like a thumping sound. The father turns around and looks and sees a dinosaur peering through the back of the vehicle at them. He doesn't say it's calls it an Allosaurus.
That would make more sense. If it is a dinosaur, Allosaurus would be like, it'd be Allosaurus, Tyrannosaurus.
So he thinks it's an Allosaurus. And I've read the testimony, and they say they just kind of stay in the car and wait for the creature to leave because they don't want to drive away and get any attention drawn to themselves. But as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, wait a second, 1999 was pretty close to, I want to say 97 when a movie came out.
Jurassic Park?
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park came out in 94.
94, okay, I'm a little bit off.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's still in people's minds. Like, it was
For sure.
sensational.
The second one came out at 99, I think.
Okay.
And that's the one where there's a T-Rex walking down in San Diego.
Okay, yeah. And the scene that they describe in the testimony was so similar. I haven't seen the second one in a very long time, but I've seen the first one, and I read the book recently.
Yeah.
Where the kids are trapped in the pod, right, and the dinosaur was right up on top of them.
Yeah.
It was very similar. So I was like, I don't know about that testimony. The time of it and the description of the Allosaurus is different than the description of the other one that they mentioned in 1907. Right. So that is the last sighting in 99 of this creature.
You don't say.
But
right before cell phones.
Yeah, of course.
It's always,
And of course, the Russians, Soviets took pictures of it, but they're not on the Western media. And Dupuy took pictures of it, but of course, never shared them. Right? There's plenty of sketches of this thing.
That's cool.
Over the years, but either from 1907, there's some documents, some pictures then of the creature climbing up the ravine with the thing in its mouth, stuff like that, but no photographic evidence. But one of the things that gives a little more weight to this story is that Dupuy described it as having gray and black fur.
Right. Yeah.
At that time, and until about 2012, we thought dinosaurs had scales. So it was determined that this kind of, I get the word right here, because these are new words for me that you know very well. This theropods, is that right?
Yeah, theropods, T-Rex, raptors.
Okay, theropods did have fur on them, and that was kind of confirmed around 2012. That's what I found online anyway.
It's debatable.
Well,
Some would say feathers too.
Okay, yeah, feathers.
But
they're saying that he wouldn't have known that in 1907. They all thought they had scales.
Right.
And described it, first thought it was some kind of, like the face of a dog. Mm-hmm. Well, we wouldn't have known. He wouldn't have known that. But they also said that this creature dragged its tail on the ground like a kangaroo. Mm-hmm. But we think the dinosaurs had the tail up.
Right.
Kind of like a cat.
That's an old depiction of dinosaurs. That's really old, like where they're standing straight up and their tails are dragging on the floor. Mm-hmm. But it makes no sense because they'd have such a, like for T-Rex example, like it was always depicted as being straight up and it's got this huge heavy head and yet its tail is straight down.
So those are two things, a pro and a con, about if the story is true or not.
Right.
You got the fur, which is like, that he wouldn't have known that. The tail, that's an old style. One of the things that I learned when I was in the Yukon was that there used to be a very, very large mammal out there called the giant ground sloth.
Yeah.
And it was huge.
Yeah, those are cool.
And I saw its skeleton at a museum. Thought that could be a monster if you didn't know what it was.
Right.
So if this creature existed back then, it would have prey of its good size. Now, caribou, I guess, would be an option as well, but because the ground sloths are gone. But for a creature to be that big, it needs a lot of food. I was trying to think, is there anywhere up there where he'd get a lot of food? Because people are not big enough for him to eat. He probably wouldn't care about eating people. And I got thinking of another podcast we covered, and I could not remember what it was, but it was of gold seekers, maybe prospectors, Klondike wannabes, I can't remember what they were, taking an alternative route to get somewhere. And they're going through a valley.
Right.
And the valley was filled with greenery and fat animals. Do you remember this at all?
Yeah.
Okay, I could not remember the podcast. I want to say it was about Nahanni National Park.
Yeah, I think it was Nahanni.
Okay, so I was thinking, if this valley exists, what a great place for a dinosaur to exist. Think of it like a little Jurassic Park.
Sure.
Right, why not? then I thought, I couldn't remember what episode that was from. And I couldn't remember like what it said. Like, oh, sure, you can have a bunch of animals in like a little, I don't want to say reverse oasis in the tundra, right? Yeah. But then throwing dinosaurs, that's kind of a Hollywood thing, right?
Yeah.
So then I did a little more research, and I found this prior to Dupuy's encounter in 1903, there was some testimony from other people who were talking to some of the local indigenous groups. Of course, I didn't get the name, right, of what group it was, but they talked about a valley up north that was kind of untouched and filled with giant monsters, creatures. I'm thinking like the ground sloth and that kind of thing, and that they would draw what they saw. And one of the things they drew, they put it on a medicine bag to one of the prospectors as settlers, and it was a dinosaur. So for them to have, they say it was anatomically correct, but you think anatomically correct in 19th century is not the same as correct in 21st century. So it was probably just a giant lizard of some kind. But that doesn't necessarily mean it was a dinosaur. But that there was some indigenous connection to this creature, that it wasn't like it was known it was there, or at least according to this drawing. So I could see that matching up, okay? I can see the lines connecting, but then there's the other side of the story where things don't quite match up. So the three men I mentioned, we've got the names I will not remember, the banker, you got the miner, and you got the reverend who were with Dupuy that day. There is no record of them existing outside of his story. Then you have in his description of the events, he has some locations wrong, the geography's wrong. But he also wrote them several years later, so I mean that's fine. Again, but there's no date or time. There's the question I had about the night cycle. And there was a problem in the 19th century, early 20th century that we covered in our last Patreon exclusive episode of journalists writing non-fiction, or I guess it would be fictional accounts in newspapers.
Right.
And they had a term for it called yellow journalism, where it's more fun journalism, not necessarily news, just to get people talking. There's also the fact that there have been a lot of reports in the Wild West of cowboys encountering dinosaurs, and that the tundra and the Arctic is kind of the last Wild West in the world. You have Nahanni National Park, which has never been properly explored, mapped out. You have the area in Russia. We talked about that recently, and after the First World War was kind of mapped out. You have a lot of open, untamed, uninhabited area where anything could be out there. Even with Nahanni National Park, they said that there was something in the mountains that would come out and attack them. So there's lots of, mystery up there because it's still kind of undiscovered. I think it'd be a perfect place to have a dinosaur or a setting of a dinosaur, because how do you say, no, it didn't happen?
Right.
And you already have stories of monsters up there, giant ground sloths. You have stories of indigenous people, indigenous legends that we've touched on, of giant creatures or monsters, that kind of thing. So why not mix in a dinosaur?
Yeah. Fun.
It's fun. But then to have not only one sighting, but two sightings by the same group, although questionable because it's the same group. And then you have the Russian sightings, and you have the sighting in 1999, which again is kind of questionable.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the same thing from 3 or 4 different sources, and the descriptions are accurate. What are your thoughts on this whole story?
Lots of thoughts. Yeah, so but first, I don't know where Ceratosaurus is from, if we're still entertaining the dinosaur thing. But the closer ones would be, like he said, Allosaurus, which was a smaller theropod. And then there's Albertosaurus and Tyrannosaurus, which were bigger. And those are found in, Saskatchewan and Alberta. Funny thing is, like, that size, though, that you're saying, there's no way. Even T-Rex wasn't that big. And Ceratosaurus, I don't know how big Ceratosaurus is, because you're saying the horn thing on the front.
Yeah.
So, like, Ceratosaurus is less than 5, and it probably even less than that. Like, the biggest thing up north there was Edmontosaurus, and Edmontosaurus is bigger than T-Rex, but it's herbivore. I think the dinosaur thing, the most likely thing, if we're going along as it being a long-lost animal, is if you're talking about dinosaurs, you're talking about something that is 65 and plus million years ago. Or you got something like the sloth, or even the North American lion, which I don't know how big the North American lion is, but it was really really big.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what? That's like 10, 20, 30. I actually don't know. Maybe it's 100,000 or a million years. I don't know. But still, even a million years is still significantly less than 65 million years. I just think that when everyone says the dinosaur thing, like sure, there's sharks, there's crocodiles, there's stuff still here from a long time ago. I think it's so hard. And you have to just like think of error. Sighting error. Jurassic Park totally makes sense because literally what you're saying reminds me of the scenes from Jurassic Park. Yeah. But it's just that first sighting is very damning, yet it's the oldest sighting and it's purely verbal.
Yeah. Well, it was printed in a paper, but yeah, it was from first person kind of thing.
Right. So I don't know. If we're talking, there's no bears that are that size, but if we're talking about bipedal, something having something in its mouth, maybe there's some kind of perspective, fear, unknown. Maybe it was closer than they actually thought. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was just a polar bear with
a seal or something.
A seal in its mouth, and they saw what they saw. I don't know. That's the only thing. That's the most logical thing, and it's funny because I always say bear as a joke, but to me, the actual most logical thing is a polar bear or a something along those lines.
Yeah, I'm thinking polar bear probably wouldn't be a polar bear. I think it's polar bears are more into the Northwest Territories by the coastline. Mm-hmm. This is more mountainous, but it could be black bear, could be brown bear. It was in the dark. They did say it had black fur, so it would be a darker animal. Mm-hmm. And
what's that? There's that super bear that actually was around not too long ago. What the hell is that thing called?
I remember hearing it. I don't know what it's called, though.
Arctotherium, blah, blah, blah. South America. Short-faced bear. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Short-faced bear, but it says South America. Mm-hmm. Anyway, those were huge.
And they also had, we're talking about giant animals, we had giant horses here, too.
Lions, horses.
Mm-hmm. Ground sloth. Bears, yeah. So giant animals could exist, but you're right with the time. Like we could say maybe there's a pocket where they haven't evolved, but they have 65 million years, and your only evolution would be fur, and the tail's a little bit different. Maybe, I don't know.
It just for the tail thing too. That makes total sense because you picture a dinosaur. It's like all length. It's always length. Mammal. You can see it. Normally it's this, but then bear.
They described it kind of like a kangaroo. Mm. Yeah. You could entertain the idea there's a secret pocket of these ancient animals living in the Yukon. Sure. But that time frame, like when you said a million years, thinking a million years is a long time. 65 million years is
unfathomable.
So much longer. Like the continents have changed since then. The landscape, we've got the whole ice age since then.
Right.
So few animals are alive that were back then. To have something this size not change, and you need to have multiple to keep it going.
Yeah. Plus, things tend to get smaller.
Yeah.
Not bigger.
Yeah. These animals we've mentioned, the giant bear, the giant horse, the ground sloth, woolly mammoth, they're gone now.
Yeah.
They've all shrunken down in size.
Yeah.
So to have something get bigger.
Right.
Yeah. And I read somewhere too about dinosaurs being cold-blooded.
Yeah, they probably were warm-blooded. It's just, it doesn't, just for their like size and stuff too. Like the more stuff I've read is they were probably warm-blooded, closer to birds. That's like the majority of the modern stuff I've read now.
Yeah, when I think of dinosaurs now, I don't think of them as lizards, I think of more of them as birds. I saw this and thought, I have to bring this to Dylan.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's one of those where they say it's a fictional story, but it's printed as truth. And the guy who wrote it was known for his adventures and what he wrote about and saw about. He talked like he was very open and a truthful person. So to print this story, when you didn't need to make up a story about dinosaurs in the Arctic, that is questionable. But then there's the questions about like where are the other men? They don't seem to exist, or the time frame, the location.
Right.
Those things are off. But there are still some other testimony that say, well, maybe he was onto something. So I'm not buying this one as much.
Yeah.
There's definitely questions about it, but I want to say probably not. There's a lot of strange things in the Arctic, but a dinosaur, I don't think is one of them.
Right. I would say dinosaur almost, dinosaur to me is the zero. Like, there's just plenty of other options other than a dinosaur.
Okay. course, to be unsolved, but I think we have solved it between us. Yeah. Well, thank
Fair.
you so much, Dylan. This is great.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was a good one. I like this. I actually probably do like this one better than the Patreon one, but it was good. I like the bear thing.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah, so they're both bear.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dylan. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please give us your thoughts on this. As always, my name is Kent Young, and I'm sitting here with my co-host, Dylan Furman, and this is Unsolved Canadian Mysteries.